Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation deck's railing, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue through the reinforced glass. The generation ship Perseverance hummed around her, its massive engines propelling humanity's last hope toward the Kepler 442 system. Behind her, the soft chatter of children echoed through the educational wing. "Mama Elena, look what I found." 7-year-old Marcus Chun held up a smooth, gray stone about the size of his small fist. His dark eyes sparkled with excitement as he cradled it carefully in both hands. Elena knelt down to his level, her graying hair falling across her shoulders. As the ship's chief xenobiologist and one of the few remaining Earthborn adults, she had become a surrogate mother to many of the children born during their 30-year journey. "That's a beautiful stone, Marcus. Where did you find it?" "In the geology lab. Dr. Thompson said I could keep it because it came from Earth." Marcus turned the stone over in his hands, examining its smooth surface. "It's from a beach somewhere called California. Do you think it remembers the ocean?" The question caught Elena off guard. In all her years studying life and its infinite variations, she had never considered whether a stone might hold memories. "What makes you think it might remember?" Marcus shrugged, the way children do when they know something adults don't understand. "It feels sad, like it misses home." He looked up at Elena with serious eyes. "I'm going to take care of it. Maybe if I water it every day, it will grow back into a mountain." Elena's heart clenched. The innocence of the statement, the pure faith in impossibility, reminded her why they had undertaken this journey. "Marcus, stones don't grow from water, sweetie. They're not alive like plants. But everything needs water to live, right? You taught us that." Marcus clutched the stone closer to his chest. "Maybe it just needs someone to believe in it." Before Elena could respond, the ship's communications system crackled to life. "Dr. Vasquez to the bridge." Dr. Vasquez to the bridge immediately. Elena squeezed Marcus's shoulder. "Keep taking care of your stone. I'll see you later, okay?" The bridge buzzed with activity when Elena arrived. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stood before the main view screen, her weathered face creased with concern. "Elena, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting something unexpected in the Kepler system." The view screen displayed a three-dimensional map of their destination. Red warning indicators pulsed around several planets. "What am I looking at?" "Structures," said Lieutenant Commander James Park, the ship's chief science officer. "Artificial structures. Kepler 442b isn't uninhabited like we thought." Elena felt her stomach drop. 30 years of travel, humanity's entire future, had been based on the assumption that they were heading to an empty world. "Are you certain?" "The geometric patterns are too regular to be natural. We're looking at cities, Elena. Massive ones." Captain Rodriguez turned to face her. "We need to know what we're dealing with. How quickly can you prepare first contact protocols?" "I've been working on theoretical frameworks for years, but, Sarah, we don't know anything about these beings. Their biology, their culture, their intentions toward strangers." Elena moved closer to the screen, studying the alien structures. "This could be humanity's greatest opportunity or our extinction. We don't have a choice. Our fuel reserves are too low to reach another system. Kepler 442b is our only option." The captain's voice carried the weight of 40,000 human lives. "How long do you need?" "Give me 72 hours. I'll need access to all sensor data and a team of linguists." Elena paused, thinking of Marcus and his impossible stone. "And Sarah? We should prepare the children. They have a right to know what we're facing." 3 days later, Elena stood before the ship's main assembly hall, packed with humanity survivors. Children sat with their guardians, their faces reflecting curiosity rather than fear. She had decided to frame their situation as an adventure rather than a crisis. "Friends," Elena began, her voice carrying across the vast space, "we're about to become explorers in the truest sense. When we reach our new home, we'll meet neighbors who built their cities among the stars long before we learned to leave Earth." A hand shot up from the children's section. Marcus Chin stood on his chair, clutching his gray stone. "Dr. Elena, will the aliens like us?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena looked out at the faces before her, young and old, hopeful and terrified. "I don't know, Marcus, but I do know something about us. Humans have a gift that's rarer than we realize. We never stop believing in impossible things." She gestured to the view screen, now showing their destination growing larger each day. "When our ancestors first looked at the stars, they believed they could touch them. When they saw empty oceans, They believed there were new lands beyond the horizon. When they held seeds in their hands, they believed those tiny specks could become vast forests. Marcus nodded vigorously, holding up his stone. Like believing a stone can grow if you take care of it. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but Elena raised her hand for quiet. Exactly like that, Marcus. That stone represents something the aliens were about to meet might never have encountered. Pure, stubborn hope in the face of impossibility. Dr. Thompson, the elderly geologist, spoke up from the front row. Elena, surely you're not suggesting that childish optimism is humanity's greatest strength. I'm suggesting it might be our only strength that matters. Elena moved to the center of the stage. Every species that survives does so because they're adapted to their environment. But humans? We survive by adapting our environment to us. We don't accept what is. We believe in what could be. The ship's AI, Arya, interrupted with a soft chime. Dr. Vasquez, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. The signal appears to be directed at us. A hush fell over the assembly. Elena nodded to the technicians, and the alien signal filled the hall. It was unlike anything they had heard before, a complex symphony of mathematical patterns woven through what sounded like crystalline music. They know we're coming, whispered someone in the crowd. Elena felt a chill run down her spine, but also a strange excitement. Yes, they do. And now we find out what that means. Over the following weeks, as the Perseverance drew closer to Kepler 442b, more transmissions arrived. The signals became increasingly complex, and Elena's linguistics team worked around the clock to decipher patterns. What they discovered both fascinated and troubled her. The aliens, who had begun calling themselves the Kethvar in their communications, appeared to be a highly logical species. Their mathematical sequences were perfect, their reasoning flawless, their technology far beyond human capabilities. But there was something missing from their transmissions, something Elena couldn't quite identify. It's like reading a brilliant scientific paper, explained Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief linguist, during a team meeting in Elena's lab. Every word is precise, every concept clearly defined. But there's no personality, no individual voice. Elena nodded, reviewing the latest translations. Look at this message. They're asking about our biological parameters and resource requirements. They want to know our atmospheric needs, our caloric intake, our reproductive cycles. It's as if they're cataloging us. Maybe that's just how they communicate, suggested Dr. Park. Not every species would express curiosity the way humans do. But that's exactly my point. Elena pulled up a holographic display of human and Kethvar communication patterns. Look at our messages to them. Even our most formal diplomatic communications are full of metaphors, questions that aren't really questions, statements that carry multiple meanings. We ask about their culture, their art, their dreams. And they ask about our metabolic efficiency, Dr. Kim finished. Elena, what if they don't have culture? What if they don't dream? The possibility hung in the lab like a dark cloud. Elena thought of Marcus, somewhere in the education wing, carefully watering his impossible stone. Then, we're about to meet the most alien intelligence humanity has ever encountered. A week before orbital insertion, Elena received a private message from the Kethvar. Unlike previous communications, this one was addressed specifically to her and included concepts that didn't translate well. Dr. Vasquez, the message began using perfect human syntax. We have analyzed your transmissions and identified you as the primary, untranslatable among your species. We require clarification on several concepts that appear repeatedly in your communications, but serve no logical function. Elena leaned forward her chair. This was the first time the Kethvar had acknowledged individual humans or asked about anything beyond basic biological data. You frequently reference hope, dreams, and imagination. Our analysis suggests these are mental processes that serve no survival function and may indicate cognitive errors. We also note that your species often pursues goals that have no probability of success. Please explain the logic of these behaviors. Elena stared at the message for a long time before responding. How could she explain hope to a species that had never needed it? How could she describe dreams to beings who had apparently never imagined anything beyond what was possible? She began typing her response slowly, choosing each word carefully. Dear Kethvar, you have identified something important about humanity. We are indeed a species that believes in impossible things. We pursue goals that logic says we cannot achieve. We hope for outcomes that have no guarantee. You ask for the logic of these behaviors, but perhaps the question itself reveals our fundamental difference. We do these things not because they are logical, but because they are necessary for us to be human. She paused, thinking of Marcus and his stone, then continued. Among our young, there's a child who believes that a stone will grow if he waters it every day. By your logic, this is a cognitive error. By our nature, it is the beginning of every miracle our species has ever achieved. Elena sent a message and waited. The response came hours later, shorter than usual. We do not understand. We require direct observation to analyze this phenomenon. Prepare for surface contact. As Elena read the message, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror. Humanity was about to meet beings who had mastered space and time, but had never learned to dream. The encounter would test everything she believed about her species. She made her way to the education wing, where she found Marcus in his usual spot by the observation window. His stone sat on the ledge beside him, next to a small cup of water. Every day, for 37 days, he had given it a drink. Has it grown at all? Elena asked, settling beside him. Marcus examined the stone carefully, turning it in the light. Not yet, but I can feel it getting ready. Sometimes the most important changes happen where you can't see them. Elena looked out at the growing planet below them, at the alien cities glittering on its surface, and realized that Marcus was about to teach the universe something about the power of impossible hope. Whether the Kethvar were ready for such a lesson remained to be seen. The next phase of humanity's greatest adventure was about to begin. The Kethvar city stretched endlessly across the horizon, like crystalline mathematics made manifest. Each building was a perfect geometric form, connected to its neighbors by graceful arcs that followed precise mathematical curves. There were no signs of decoration, no evidence of individual creativity, just flawless functionality extending to the edge of vision. Elena stood on the bridge of the shuttle Discovery as it descended through Kepler 442b's atmosphere, watching the alien metropolis grow larger through the viewscreen. Beside her, Captain Rodriguez gripped her command chair, while Marcus Chun pressed his face against the observation window, his precious stone clutched in his small hands. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered. "But it looks sad." Dr. Park glanced up from his instruments. "Sad?" "Marcus, it's the most perfectly designed city I've ever seen." "That's what makes it sad," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. "There's no room for mistakes, no room for surprises." Elena felt a chill at the child's observation. In the 3 days since they'd entered orbit, the Kethvar had demonstrated technological capabilities that seemed almost magical. They had guided the Perseverance to a stable orbit using gravity fields that human science barely understood. They had analyzed the ship's structure and population without ever coming close enough to see. They had even begun repairing systems that the human crew hadn't realized were damaged. But in all their communications, they had never once expressed curiosity about anything beyond practical matters. They wanted to know human nutritional requirements, atmospheric needs, and biological functions. They showed no interest in human art, music, or dreams. "Incoming transmission from Surface Control," announced Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. The view screen flickered, and a figure appeared that made several crew members gasp. The Kethvar were humanoid in basic shape, but seemed to be made of living crystal. Smooth, translucent surfaces reflected internal light in complex patterns, and their faces held a perfect symmetry that was somehow unsettling. "Human vessel Discovery, you will land at coordinates being transmitted to your navigation system. A delegation will meet you to begin assessment protocols." Elena stepped forward. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. We appreciate your welcome and look forward to peaceful contact between our species." The Kethvar figure tilted its head slightly. "Dr. Vasquez, you are the designated untranslatable among your group. You will present your species for evaluation. Prepare your specimens." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the shuttle crew in uncomfortable silence. Captain Rodriguez was the first to speak. "Specimens? They don't understand the concept of individuals," Elena realized. "To them, we're probably just variations of the same basic template." Marcus tugged on Elena's sleeve. "Dr. Elena, what if they don't like us?" Elena knelt down to his level. "Then, we'll have to show them something they've never seen before. Something that might change their minds." The shuttle touched down on a landing pad that seemed to grow up from the ground to meet them. As the crew prepared for their first contact with alien intelligence, Elena noticed that Marcus had tucked his stone into his pocket, but carried the small cup of water he used for his daily ritual. "Marcus, you can't bring that water cup with you." "But it's almost time for his drink," Marcus protested. "I promised I'd take care of him." Elena was about to explain why this wasn't practical when she stopped herself. If humanity was about to be judged by beings who had never learned to hope for impossible things, maybe they needed their most hopeful representative with them. "All right," she said, "but stay close to me." The airlock cycled open, revealing 3 Kethvar waiting on the landing platform. They stood in perfect formation, their crystalline bodies refracting the sunlight into rainbow patterns. The middle figure, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward. "I am Designate Prime Kethys 9, administrator of this facility. You will accompany us for processing." Elena extended her hand in a universal human gesture of greeting. "Ingu Lena Vasquez. It's an honor to meet you." Kethys 9 looked at her outstretched hand with what might have been confusion. "Your gesture serves no functional purpose. Please follow." As they walked through the alien city, Elena was struck by the complete absence of anything she would call life. The buildings were perfect, the pathways flawless, the environment precisely controlled. But there were no gardens, no decorations, no signs that anyone had ever chosen to make something beautiful simply because they wanted to. "Designate Prime," Elena began. "Can you tell us about your culture, your arts, your history?" Culture serves no survival function. Arts are inefficient resource allocation. History is data storage. Kethys 9 led them toward a massive central building. "We require information about your species' operational parameters." Marcus whispered to Elena. "It's like they're alive, but not living." They were led into a vast chamber filled with scanning equipment that Elena couldn't begin to understand. Dozens of other Kethvar moved through the space with perfect coordination, like dancers following a choreography none of them had to think about. "You will submit to biological analysis," announced Kethys 9. "We must determine your species' potential threat level and resource requirements." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "We're peaceful explorers. We're not a threat to anyone." "Peace and threat potential are separate variables," another Kethvar responded. "Biological entities exhibit unpredictable behaviors. Predictability requires comprehensive data." Elena watched as scanning beams played over the human delegation. The readings appeared on crystalline displays around the chamber, showing biological data in formats she recognized but couldn't fully understand. The Kethvar absorbed the information with apparent satisfaction. "Your species shows standard carbon-based parameters," Kethys 9 concluded. "Physical capabilities are within acceptable ranges. However, your neural patterns indicate significant anomalies." "Anomalies?" Elena asked. "Your brains dedicate substantial processing power to non-functional activities. Analysis indicates 73% of your mental capacity is devoted to simulating scenarios that have no basis in observable reality." Elena felt a smile creep across her face. "You mean imagination?" "We mean cognitive malfunction. Your species expends energy processing impossible scenarios, creating fictional narratives, and pursuing goals with zero probability of success." Kethys 9 gestured to the displays showing human brain scans. "This is highly inefficient." "Maybe," Elena said, "but it's also what makes us human." Marcus had been quietly listening to the exchange while holding his water cup. Now he stepped forward, looking up at the towering crystal being. "Excuse me, Mr. Kethys 9. Every Kethvar in the chamber turned to look at the small human child. Kethys 9 tilted his head in that peculiar way. "Juvenile human, what do you require?" Marcus pulled his stone from his pocket and held it up. "This is my friend. He came from Earth, from a place called a beach. Every day, I give him water because I think he's sad and misses home. Do you think that's wrong?" The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of alien machinery. Kethys 9 studied the stone in Marcus's hands with an intensity that made Elena nervous. "The object you display is composed of silicon dioxide with trace mineral inclusions. It is non-living matter. It cannot experience sadness. It does not require hydration. Your behavior toward it serves no logical function." Marcus nodded seriously. "That's what grown-ups usually say. But what if you're wrong?" "We are not wrong. Our analysis is complete and accurate." Marcus carefully poured a small amount of water over his stone, then tucked it back in his pocket. I know you think it's silly, but my mama Elena taught me that the most important things humans do are the ones that don't make sense to anyone else. He looked around at the perfect crystal beings surrounding them. You've made everything perfect. Your city is perfect. Your machines are perfect. You're probably perfect too. But my stone isn't perfect, and that's why I love him. Another Kethvar, slightly smaller than the others, moved closer. Child unit. Explain the logical basis for emotional attachment to non-functional objects. Marcus considered this seriously. Well, when I water my stone, I'm not really trying to make him grow. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit. But mostly I'm promising him that even if nobody else believes in impossible things, I will. Elena watched the Kethvar exchange glances, or what passed for glances among beings whose faces showed no expression. Something in their perfect synchronization seemed to falter slightly. The child displays classic symptoms of cognitive dysfunction, Kethis, 9 finally pronounced. However, this may be correctable through proper education. What kind of education? Elena asked, suddenly wary. We will teach your species to think logically, to abandon wasteful mental processes, to achieve perfect efficiency. Kethis, 9 gestured to the city around them. We will make you like us. And if we don't want to be like you, the question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena could feel the weight of 40,000 human lives depending on how the next few moments unfolded. Then, you will remain defective, replied another Kethvar. Defective entities pose risks to perfect systems. Risks must be eliminated. Elena felt her heart sink, but Marcus stepped forward again. Can I show you something? Without waiting for permission, he walked to one of the wall displays showing geological data from the planet's surface. The screen showed perfectly organized crystal formations, mathematical precision extending deep into the planet's crust. Marcus placed his small hand against the display. This is beautiful, but it's also lonely. Every crystal knows exactly where it belongs, exactly what it's supposed to do, but none of them ever gets to wonder what would happen if they tried something different. He turned back to the assembled Kethvar. Humans wonder about things. We imagine what could be instead of just accepting what is. Sometimes it makes us do silly things like watering stones, but sometimes it helps us do impossible things like traveling between stars to meet new friends. The smallest Kethvar moved closer to Marcus. You classify us as friends despite our apparent incompatibility? Well, you haven't heard us yet, Marcus said with the matter-of-fact optimism of childhood. And Mama Elena says friendship starts with hoping someone might like you, even when you have no reason to think they will. Elena saw something she hadn't expected, a flicker of uncertainty in the Kethvar's perfect composure. For beings who prided themselves on logical certainty, encountering a species that thrived on uncertainty seemed to create a fascinating paradox. Your species presents a logical impossibility, Kethis, 9 admitted. You should have achieved extinction through inefficient resource allocation. Yet you traveled 127 light years to reach us. You should be unable to function with such high levels of cognitive malfunction. Yet you display complex problem-solving capabilities. Maybe, Elena suggested, efficiency isn't the only way to measure success. As she spoke, she watched the Kethvar process this concept. For the first time since landing, she began to hope that humanity might have something to offer these perfect beings, something they had never realized they were missing. The real test was about to begin. The Kethvar Council Chamber was a marvel of crystalline architecture that hurt to look at directly. Every surface reflected and refracted light in mathematical patterns, creating a space that existed as much in pure geometry as in physical reality. Elena sat with the human delegation at a table that had grown from the floor at their arrival, while dozens of Kethvar stood in perfect formation around them. 3 days had passed since their initial contact, 3 days of constant questioning and analysis. The Kethvar had subjected them to every conceivable test, biological, psychological, intellectual, yet seemed no closer to understanding humanity than when they started. The data creates contradictions, announced Kethis, 9 from the center of the chamber. Your species demonstrates advanced technological capability, yet maintains inefficient cognitive processes. You achieved interstellar travel while dedicating significant mental resources to non-functional activities. Elena leaned forward in her chair. Perhaps the non-functional activities aren't as separate from our achievements as you think. Elaborate. The same imagination you call a malfunction is what allowed us to envision traveling to the stars before we had the technology to do it. The same hope you call illogical is what sustained us through 30 years in space. The same dreams you call wasteful gave us a reason to survive when survival seemed impossible. A new Kethvar, distinguished by slightly more complex light patterns within its crystalline form, stepped forward. I'm Archive Prime Sealant 3. I maintain historical records for our civilization. Your claims suggest correlation between cognitive dysfunction and technological advancement. This contradicts established principles. Captain Rodriguez joined the conversation. How did your species develop interstellar travel? Through logical progression. We identified requirements, developed solutions, implemented systems. Each step followed necessarily from the previous step. But who decided you wanted to travel to other worlds in the first place? The question created a moment of stillness in the chamber. Elena watched the Kethvar exchange their subtle communication patterns, flickers of light through their crystalline bodies that conveyed information faster than sound. The desire for expansion is logical, Sealant 3 finally replied. Resource acquisition requires territorial growth. But why did the first Kethvar look up at the stars and want to reach them? Elena pressed. Before you knew there were resources there? Before you had any logical reason to leave your world? The silence stretched longer this time. Elena realized they had stumbled onto something the Kethvar couldn't explain with their perfect logic. Marcus, who had been quietly giving his stone its daily water at the edge of the table, looked up at the towering beings around him. Maybe you forgot. Every being in the chamber focused on the small human child. Kethys Nine's voice carried a note Elena hadn't heard before: uncertainty. Forgot what? Human child? Maybe you forgot what it felt like to wonder about things. Marcus held up his stone, water droplets still glistening on its surface. Maybe a long time ago, one of your people looked at the stars and thought, I wonder what's up there, instead of what resources might be available for extraction. Impossible. Our species has always prioritized logical thought processes. But somebody had to be the first one to want something impossible, Marcus insisted. Somebody had to dream about touching the stars before anybody figured out how to build ships. Elena saw something extraordinary happen. For the first time since contact, the Kethvar didn't respond immediately. Their light patterns flickered in complex sequences, and she realized they were engaged in heated discussion. Sealant 3 finally spoke, and its voice carried a strange quality. Archive records indicate gaps in our early historical data. The period of initial spaceflight development contains unusual inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? Elena asked. Records from that era reference concepts that no longer exist in our language. Terms that appear to describe non-functional mental processes similar to those you demonstrate. Kethys 9 moved closer to the human delegation. You suggest our ancestors experienced cognitive malfunctions similar to yours. We suggest, Elena said carefully, that your ancestors might have been more like us than you realize. The chamber erupted in light patterns as dozens of Kethvar communicated simultaneously. Elena caught fragments of their translated discussion. Arguments about historical accuracy, debates over the reliability of ancient records, questions about the nature of progress and evolution. This is impossible, declared another council member Elena hadn't met before. Our species has achieved perfection through the elimination of inefficient thinking. We cannot have descended from cognitively defective ancestors. But if you did, Marcus said, standing on his chair to address the towering beings, that would mean you threw away the part of yourselves that wanted to reach for the stars. The small boy's words hit the chamber like a physical blow. The light patterns within the Kethvar flickered wildly, and Elena realized they were experiencing something they might never have felt before: doubt. Sealant 3 activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Ancient Kethvar artifacts appeared in the air. Writings, artworks, structures that looked nothing like the perfect geometric forms that surrounded them now. These objects date from the pre-perfection era, Sealant 3 explained. We have always classified them as primitive attempts at functional design. But examining them through the lens of your cognitive patterns. The holographic artifacts rotated slowly, revealing details that Elena found startling. The ancient Kethvar had created art, not functional designs, but purely aesthetic expressions. They had written poetry, told stories, built structures that served no purpose except beauty. They were like us, Elena whispered. This cannot be accurate, protested Kethis 9, but its voice lacked conviction. Marcus walked over to the holographic display, his stone still clutched in one hand. He reached up to touch one of the ancient artifacts, a crystal sculpture that served no functional purpose except to be beautiful. They knew how to hope, he said softly. They knew how to want impossible things. But somewhere along the way, they decided it was more important to be right than to wonder. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched the Kethvar struggle with concepts their perfect minds couldn't process. They had achieved everything they thought they wanted: perfection, efficiency, logical certainty. But they had lost the ability to dream of something better. The question, Elena said, addressing the entire assembly, is what you want to do with this knowledge. You could dismiss it, classify it as irrelevant historical data, and continue, as you always have. Or what? Asked Seelan 3. Or you could remember how to wonder. A young Kethvar at the edge of the assembly. Elena could tell it was young by its smaller size and simpler light patterns, stepped forward hesitantly. Archive Prime, permission to speak? Granted, Youth Unit Thuran 7. I've been observing the human child's daily ritual with the stone. According to all logical analysis, his behavior serves no function. Yet what? Demanded Kethis 9. Yet I find myself curious about the outcome. I find myself wondering if perhaps something unexpected might happen. The admission sent shock waves through the chamber. Elena realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in Kethvar history, an individual expressing curiosity about something illogical. This is a malfunction, declared another council member. Youth Unit Thuran 7 requires immediate correction. No, said Marcus, walking over to the young Kethvar. This is the most normal thing I've heard since we got here. He looked up at Thuran 7 with the serious expression children reserve for important moments. Do you want to help me water my stone? The chamber fell silent. Elena held her breath as Thuran 7 considered the question. A question that had never been asked in Kethvar civilization, a question that required choosing between logic and curiosity. I do not understand why, Thuran 7 said slowly, but yes. I believe I would like to participate in your non-functional ritual. Kethis 9 stepped forward quickly. Youth Unit Thuran 7. This behavior contradicts fundamental principles of efficient thought. You will report for cognitive recalibration immediately. Wait, Elena said, rising from her chair. What if we proposed an experiment? What kind of experiment? Elena looked around the chamber, at beings who had forgotten how to hope, and made the biggest gamble of her life. Give us 30 days. Let some of your people work with us, learn from us, experience what we call imagination. At the end of that time, evaluate whether exposure to human cognitive patterns has made them more or less effective. And if the experiment proves our method superior, Elena's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. Then humanity will accept whatever judgment you deem appropriate. And if somehow your methods prove superior, then perhaps it's time for the Kethvar to remember how to dream. The chamber erupted in light patterns again, but Elena noticed something different this time. The perfect synchronization was breaking down. Some Kethvar were communicating in patterns she hadn't seen before, hesitant, questioning, uncertain patterns that suggested individual thought rather than collective processing. Marcus walked back to Elena and tugged on her sleeve. Dr. Elena, he whispered, I think my stone just got a little bit warmer. Elena looked down at the small gray stone in the boy's hands. It looked exactly the same as always, but she found herself hoping, illogically, impossibly, that maybe Marcus was right. Very well, Kethis 9 announced after a long consultation. We will conduct this experiment. But understand, Dr. Vasquez, we are perfect beings. Your cognitive malfunctions cannot improve upon perfection. Maybe not, Elena replied, watching as Thuran 7 approached Marcus with something that looked remarkably like curiosity. But maybe perfection isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's just the beginning of wondering what comes next. The greatest experiment in galactic history was about to begin. 23 days into the experiment, the Kethvar city had begun to change in ways that defied logical analysis. Elena walked through the research district, observing transformations that would have been impossible a month earlier. Where once every building had been a perfect geometric form, now she saw subtle variations, slight curves where there had been straight lines, unexpected angles that served no functional purpose, crystalline growths that resembled flowers more than machinery. The changes weren't dramatic, but for a species that had achieved perfection through absolute uniformity, they were revolutionary. Duh. Marcus called out from across the plaza. He was sitting with Aren, 7 beside a fountain that definitely hadn't existed yesterday. The young Kethvar had somehow convinced the city's construction systems to create something purely aesthetic. Water dancing in patterns that followed no mathematical formula except beauty. Elena approached them, noting that Aren 7's crystalline form had developed new light patterns over the past weeks. Where once its internal luminescence had been steady and predictable, now it flickered with what could only be described as personality. Look what Aren taught the water to do. Marcus pointed excitedly at the fountain, where liquid spiraled upward in impossible helixes before cascading back down in musical notes. The humans call it playing, Aren 7 explained, its translated voice carrying inflections Elena had never heard from a Kethvar before. It serves no survival function, produces no useful output, consumes energy for no logical purpose. It is wonderful, Elena suggested. I was going to say addictive. The desire to create non-functional beauty appears to be progressive in nature. Elena smiled, watching Marcus give his stone its daily drink while sitting beside a fountain created by an alien who was learning to waste water beautifully. How does it feel? Feel. Aren 7's light patterns shifted to configurations Elena was beginning to recognize as confusion. I do not understand the concept. The fountain, Elena clarified. When you look at it, when you see the water dancing, what happens inside your mind? The young Kethvar was quiet for a long moment, its internal light pulsing in slow, contemplative rhythms. There is a satisfaction that does not correlate with task completion or goal achievement. The visual patterns create resonances in my consciousness that serve no function but seem important. That's called happiness, Marcus said matter-of-factly. It's when something makes you feel good for no special reason. Happiness. Aren 7 repeated the word carefully. This emotion is common among humans. Oh yes, Elena confirmed. We collect happy moments the way you collect data. Sometimes we even choose to do things just because they might make us happy, even when they're not practical. This explains much about human behavior that we could not analyze, Aren 7 admitted. But it creates new questions. If efficiency is not your primary goal, what motivates your species? Marcus looked up from watering his stone. We want things to be better. Not just better for us, but better for everyone. Better in ways that nobody's thought of yet. Elena sat down beside them, marveling at how natural it had become to have philosophical discussions with a crystal being while a human child performed daily miracles of hope. Aren, what do your people think about the changes happening in the city? The young Kethvar's light patterns shifted to what Elena had learned indicated distress. The Council of Optimization is concerned. Productivity in several sectors has decreased as individuals dedicate time to non-functional activities. Some have begun asking questions that have no useful answers. What kind of questions? Why is the sky blue? What would happen if we tried to make music instead of efficiency reports? Do the stars have names beyond their catalog numbers? Elena felt a mixture of excitement and worry. The experiment was working too well. And Kethys 9? What does he think about all this? Designate Prime Kethys 9 has requested termination of the experiment. He classifies the changes as viral cognitive contamination that threatens the stability of our civilization. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. After everything they had learned, everything they had shared, the Kethvar leadership was still viewing human consciousness as a disease to be cured. But you don't agree, Marcus said to the Aren 7. It wasn't a question. I find myself uncertain. Before contact with your species, I knew my function, my purpose, my place in the optimal structure of society. Now I know those same things, but I also know that there might be other possibilities I have never considered. That's what we call wonder, Elena explained. The feeling that there's always something new to discover, always another question to ask. Wonder, the Aren 7 repeated. Is this why humans continue to exist despite your inefficiencies? It's why we continue to live, Marcus corrected. Existing is just not dying. Living is wondering what amazing thing might happen tomorrow. As if summoned by their conversation, a group of crystalline figures approached across the plaza. Elena recognized Kethys 9 in the lead, flanked by several other high-ranking Kethvar. Their light patterns were agitated, pulsing in the aggressive sequences Elena had learned to associate with determination. Dr. Vasquez, Kethis, 9 announced as they arrived. The experiment is concluded. Report to the main assembly for final evaluation. Elena stood slowly, her heart sinking. We still have 7 days remaining in the agreed time frame. The data is conclusive. Further observation is unnecessary. Marcus clutched his stone protectively, while the Run 7 moved closer to the humans in what might have been a protective gesture. Elena noticed other changes too. Several young Kethvar had gathered around the plaza, watching the confrontation with something that looked like concern. The Run 7, Kethis, 9 continued. You will report for immediate cognitive recalibration. The contamination in your thought patterns has reached critical levels. I respectfully decline, the Ren 7 replied. The words created a shock wave through the assembled Kethvar. Elena realized she had just witnessed something that had probably never happened in Kethvar civilization. Direct refusal of authority based on personal choice. You decline. Kethis 9's light patterns flared into configurations Elena had never seen before. Individual units do not decline directives from optimization authority. Perhaps they should, said another voice. Everyone turned to see Seelin, 3 approaching from the direction of the archive district. The keeper of historical records moved with less certainty than Elena had observed before, its light patterns flickering in patterns that suggested internal conflict. Archive Prime, Kethis, 9 warned, do not allow contamination to compromise your logical processes. I've spent the past 23 days reviewing historical data with new analytical frameworks, Seelin, 3 replied. The results are troubling. The Archive Prime activated a holographic display that filled the plaza with images and data streams. Elena recognized some of the content from their earlier meeting, artifacts from ancient Kethvar civilization, but much of it was new. I have discovered evidence that our transition to perfect efficiency was not gradual evolution as we believed. It was a deliberate choice made approximately 3,000 standard years ago in response to a catastrophic crisis. Irrelevant historical data, Kethis, 9 dismissed. Not irrelevant. Essential. Seelin, 3 highlighted specific sections of the data. Our ancestors faced extinction due to resource conflicts caused by inefficient emotional decision-making. The solution was the Great Optimization, a systematic elimination of all non-logical thought processes. Marcus stepped forward, still holding his stone. What happened to the Kethvar who didn't want to be optimized? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Seelin 3's light patterns dimmed to barely visible flickers. They were corrected, or removed from the population if correction failed. Elena felt sick. The Kethvar hadn't evolved beyond emotion and imagination. They had systematically destroyed those parts of themselves in the name of efficiency. You committed genocide against your own capacity for wonder, she whispered. We saved our species from extinction through logical decision-making, Kethis, 9 countered. The same crisis that faces us now if we allow this contamination to spread. But we're not facing extinction, the Ren 7 protested. We are facing the possibility of growth. Other young Kethvar in the plaza began to emit light patterns Elena had learned to recognize as agreement. The perfect unity of Kethvar society was fracturing as individuals began to think for themselves. Growth without direction is chaos, Kethis, 9 declared. Chaos is destruction. This contamination ends now. Elena watched in horror as enforcement units materialized around the plaza. Kethvar specialized for maintaining order through force. But then she noticed something that gave her hope. The enforcement units were hesitating. Enforcement Squad Leader, Kethis, 9 commanded, initiate containment protocols for contaminated units. The lead enforcement unit stepped forward, but its movements were uncertain. Designate Prime, clarification requested. Define parameters for identifying contaminated units. Units displaying non-functional cognitive patterns. Units prioritizing inefficient activities. Units questioning optimization directives. The enforcement leader's light patterns flickered. Designate Prime. Those parameters would classify approximately 60% of the city population as requiring containment. Elena felt a surge of hope. The experiment hadn't just affected a few individuals. It had spread throughout Kethvar society like wildfire. The hunger for wonder, once awakened, was apparently contagious. Marcus stepped into the center of the plaza, his small figure dwarfed by the crystalline giants surrounding him. He held up a stone, still damp from its daily watering. "Mr. Kethys 9, he said in his clear, child's voice, "what are you afraid of?" "I do not experience fear." "Fear is an inefficient emotional response." "Then, why do you want to stop us from hoping?" The question pierced through all of Kethys 9's logical defenses. Elena watched the designate prime struggle with concepts he had no framework to process. "Because," Kethys 9 finally replied, "hope leads to disappointment. Disappointment leads to despair. Despair leads to extinction." Marcus nodded seriously. "That's true. Sometimes hope doesn't work out. Sometimes you water a stone every day for months, and it never grows." He looked down at the gray stone in his hands. "But what if it does?" As he spoke, Marcus poured the last of his water over the stone as he had done every day for over 60 days. The water ran off the smooth surface as always, gathering in small puddles at his feet. But this time, something was different. The stone began to glow. Elena stared in disbelief as the simple gray rock in Marcus's hands started emitting a soft, warm light. The glow grew brighter, spreading through the stone like dawn breaking through clouds. "Impossible, que tu ne whispered." But, even as he spoke, Elena realized what was happening. The stone wasn't growing in the way Marcus had hoped. It was responding to 63 days of water, care, and belief by revealing what it had always been. The rock from Earth's ancient beaches was no ordinary stone. It was crystalline at its core, its structure perfectly compatible with HFY bioluminescent technology. Marcus's daily watering had gradually activated dormant properties, creating a bridge between two worlds. It was never about making the stone grow, Elena breathed. It was about discovering what it could become. The glowing stone in Marcus's hands cast light patterns that somehow harmonized with the bioluminescence of every HFY in the plaza. For the first time in 3,000 years, human hope and HFY perfection sang the same song. And in that moment, everything changed. 1 year later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Harmony Station, watching the impossible sight below her. The HFY city had transformed beyond recognition, becoming something that was neither purely alien nor purely human, but utterly beautiful. Crystalline spires now grew in organic spirals, their surfaces rippling with light patterns that changed according to the moods of their inhabitants. Gardens of living crystal flourished alongside earth plants in impossible combinations, creating ecosystems that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. And, throughout it all, fountains danced with water that sang in harmonies only possible when hope and logic learned to work together. "The integration proceeds faster than our most optimistic projections," reported Sealant 3, approaching with a light pattern Elena had learned to recognize as excitement. The Archive Prime had become something like humanity's official liaison, though titles meant less now in a society learning to value individuals over functions. "How are the council meetings going?" Elena asked. Sealant 3's light patterns shifted to what humans had dubbed the frustrated rainbow, the complex sequence that indicated a HFY trying to explain something that didn't translate well. "The concept of meetings has evolved significantly. What you humans call brainstorming appears to be highly infectious among our population. Yesterday's infrastructure planning session resulted in 17 new artistic installations and a proposal to modify our orbital mechanics to create better sunsets." Elena loves it. "And the productivity reports?" "Paradoxically improving. It appears that beings who enjoy their work perform it more efficiently than those who simply execute optimal procedures. Our output has increased by 23%, while our resource consumption has decreased by 31%. Joy is efficient," Elena mused. Who would have thought? They were interrupted by the sound of running feet as Marcus burst onto the observation deck, his hair flying behind him and his face flushed with excitement. In the years since first contact, he had grown taller, and his voice had begun to change, but he still carried his stone everywhere. "Dr. Elena, Sealant, you have to see what they're in and I made." Behind Marcus, they're in. 7 glided with the peculiar movement pattern HFY had developed when they were trying not to appear too eager. The young alien had changed dramatically over the year, developing unique light patterns and crystal formations that made it clear this was an individual, not just another perfect unit. "What did you create this time?" Elena asked, though she was almost afraid to find out. Marcus and therein collaborations had a tendency to revolutionize scientific understanding while appearing to be simple games. We taught my stone to sing. Marcus held up the crystalline rock, which now glowed with a steady, warm light that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Over the months, the stone had continued to develop, becoming something unprecedented, a hybrid of earth minerals and Kethvar luminescent technology. Observe, therein, Seven said, its excitement evident in rapid light patterns. We discovered that the stone responds to emotional resonances in a quantifiable manner. Marcus placed the stone on the deck's railing and began to hum a simple earth lullaby. The stone's glow shifted to match the melody, creating visual music that was hauntingly beautiful. But more than that, the light pattern seemed to evoke emotions in everyone watching, a deep sense of peace and connection that transcends species barriers. It's not just responding to sound, Elena realized. It's responding to the emotional intent behind the sound. Correct, therein, Seven confirmed. The stone has become a bridge between human emotional expression and Kethvar energy manipulation. We believe it may be the first example of true bio-emotional crystalline life. Elena stared at the singing stone, marveling at the impossible thing that had grown from a child's stubborn hope and daily care. Marcus, do you realize what this means? It means my stone is happy, Marcus replied with the practical wisdom of children. And when he's happy, he makes everyone around him happy too. It means, Seelin, 3 added, that your species has accidentally created a new form of life by refusing to accept impossibility. Before Elena could respond, her communication device chimed with an incoming transmission from the Perseverance. Captain Rodriguez's face appeared on the small screen, and Elena could see the wonder in her expression. Elena, you need to see this. We're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Word about the Human Kethvar Alliance has spread, and the captain paused, as if struggling to believe her own words. We're getting messages from dozens of species. They want to meet us. Elena felt her heart rate increase. What kind of messages? Everything from scientific exchange proposals to Rodriguez consulted her notes, requests for instruction in what they're calling hope methodology. Elena, I think the galaxy has been waiting for someone to prove that impossible things can happen. As if in response to the news, Marcus's stone pulsed brighter, and its song grew more complex. Around the observation deck, other lights began to respond. Kethvar, luminescence, human technology, even the crystalline gardens below began to glow in harmony. It's spreading, therein, Seven observed with wonder. The resonance pattern is propagating through all connected systems. Elena watched as the entire city below them began to pulse with synchronized light, a visual symphony of hope that could be seen from orbit. But, more than that, she could feel it, a sensation of connectedness and possibility that seemed to reach beyond the boundaries of individual consciousness. The stone isn't just singing, she whispered. It's teaching. Over the following weeks, as news of the Human Kethvar collaboration spread across interstellar communication networks, Elena found herself at the center of the galaxy's first truly cooperative alliance. Species after species arrived to study what they called the miracle of Kepler, 442b, the transformation of a perfect but sterile civilization through contact with humanity's chaotic hope. The Zalari, beings of pure energy who had forgotten how to take physical form, learned from human children's games to create bodies of living light. The Thorkin Collective, a hive mind that had achieved perfect unity at the cost of individuality, began to celebrate the unique perspectives of their component beings. The ancient Vorthan Empire, whose rigid hierarchies had remained unchanged for millennia, started experimenting with something they had never tried before, asking their citizens what they wanted rather than telling them what was optimal. And through it all, Marcus's stone continued to grow and change, becoming a focal point for the impossible, a crystalline heart that beat with the rhythm of hope itself. Dr. Elena, Marcus said one evening as they sat together in the Harmony Gardens, watching alien children from a dozen species play games that had never existed before contact. Do you think my stone will ever stop growing? Elena looked at the boy who had become a bridge between worlds, at the alien friends who had learned to laugh, at the city that had chosen beauty over perfection, and at the stone that glowed with the combined dreams of countless beings. I hope not, she replied. I hope it grows forever. Marcus nodded seriously, then smiled with the innocent wisdom that had started all. Me too. Because the best part isn't that impossible things can happen. The best part is that we never know which impossible thing will happen next. As if in agreement, his stone pulsed once, bright and warm, and somewhere in the distance, a HFY child laughed for the first time in 3,000 years. The universe had learned to hope again, one impossible moment at a time. High above them, in the void between stars, other ships were setting course for Kepler 442b. Other species who had heard the singing of the stone and felt the call of something they had thought lost forever. The courage to believe that tomorrow might be better than today, not because logic demanded it, but because hope made it possible. And, in the gardens of the impossible city, human children taught alien friends how to make wishes on stars, while crystalline beings learned that the most important truths weren't found in perfect equations, but in the stubborn faith that stones might grow if you just love them enough to keep trying. Marcus kept watering his stone every day, and every day it sang a little brighter, reached a little further, touched a few more hearts across the galaxy, with its message of impossible hope made real. Some stones, it turned out, were worth believing in. Some stones changed everything.